Welcome back to another episode of Elevator Dialogue here on the Uncle Junior Network. I go by the name of the Uncle Junior, and with us today are today's Wolfpack members. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Antoine, the other artist, Christopher. We got Christopher McClellan, the angry guy trying to learn. Right beside him, we got Dwayne Dwyer, the only mindset coach you will ever need. And then right next to him, the man of many hats, Mr. Poor Man's Dr. Phil. And right up top, right beside me, is Mr. Victor Viziant, Mr. Accountability himself, a 17-time best-selling author. Go ahead and pick up all 17 of his books. You can find them on Amazon. You can do the audio book by Antoine on Spotify. So go out there and pick them up.
That would be ridiculous.
I want, you know what? Let's do
That'd
it.
Be great.
This is what we want to hear. We want the code, but we wanted the audio book narrated by Antoine.
That'll be the only way he'll read it.
Oh, shit.
Antoine, so he can take credit for it.
I'll read it.
See,
I'll do the voiceover.
You do the voiceover?
I would.
I do. I like it. I like it. Hey, how y'all doing this evening, gentlemen?
Man, pretty good.
Bless you.
I'm well.
Yeah.
Doing all right.
I'm blessed, brother.
Man, I'm glad to be here.
Like that.
Antoine, here we go with the nuts again. Every week, Antoine and his nuts.
Let's say it.
Antoine, you're gonna turn into a squirrel.
Oh, but this one's like, okay, sorry. Sorry, just that they're really good.
Hey, it is what it is. Hey, appreciate everybody, all you gentlemen for being here tonight. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody that's watching at home and everybody who may watch on the replay. Hey, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have been thinking about this topic for a long time, and I know, especially in relationship, this can be a very sometimes it can be a very thin line. The difference between control and leadership. You know, some of us has been in the military. We've experienced leadership. We've experienced control, and some of us may have been on both sides of that coin at some point. Not necessarily even in the military at all, but I do want to get into it. But I want to start off with the question, and the question is simply this: give yourself, well, not a question. It's a more of a, man, we can see it. So give your younger self one leadership nugget. In what age? So if you would go back, you'd be like, hey, I got this leadership nugget that I want to give my former self. What would that nugget be? And what age would you be giving that nugget to of yourself? Make sense? Like, here's my leadership nugget, and I'm giving it to my 14-year-old self.
Lead us, Graybeard. Lead us, Graybeard. Tell us what you would tell your younger self, Unc.
Well, I'm posing the questions right now, so, but I will do that because I am part of the panel. So let's start with me.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things that I would tell myself would probably be my 14-year-old self, right around 13 or 14. Ninth grade is when my father went to rehab, and our house got divided up. They split us up into the 3 different homes. So what I would tell my 13, 14-year-old self is that to more like there's going to be struggles, there are going to be trials, all these different things, but don't run from them, right? So what I did was, as soon as I got the chance, I ran from everything. I'm not saying it was good. I'm not saying it was bad. I think it worked out eventually, but there was some damage that was done along the way. Not saying that it was good, not saying that it was bad or whatever. So I think that I would tell my 13, 14-year-old self right around 19, right around that time would be to, like, pretty much like everything I just said.
I would probably say maybe my 16 or 17-year-old self, be more confident in your decisions and don't try to, like, see if anybody else see if anyone else approves of what you want to do. Like, people pleasing things of that nature. You kind of do that early on, because how you raise is to make sure other people are comfortable. Don't make other people uncomfortable with your presence or something like that. Because like when you're a child and you reaching those between years, you can make people either be very uncomfortable with themselves because you haven't lived enough life, and nobody's gonna necessarily respect you around where you grew up at. But be more confident in making decisions that only you have to live with, instead of like focused on trying to make everybody else comfortable. That's probably what I would tell myself.
I think I would tell my younger self that you don't have to know everything. Use your resources, and people are resources. So if you know someone who knows what you need to know, you have all you need.
What age?
I think I would have to go back to 17.
17. Dang, we're all in our teens right now. Dang, we went way back.
I would go back and tell my younger self, man, I would say work harder in your 20s.
What age? What age, Antoine?
20s, in my 20s.
20 what? Because 21 is way different than 29.
I would say from 18 going into 20, like that,
right,
beginning
early. Okay.
Earliest as can be. I would say work harder, man. Don't play catch up later, and try to just work harder. Don't take your 20s for granted. I think I took my 20s for granted. And I'd say don't do it. Work harder in your 20s so you're more set in your 30s, instead of trying to, do everything in your 40s and 50s. That's what I would say.
For me, it would be my 19-year-old self. And I would introduce to me at that time the concept of purpose. Because at that particular stage, I think, especially for me, I can't speak for everybody, but I have talked to a lot of people who, even at the age of late 30s, early 40s, even late 40s, they're still struggling with their purpose. So in to my 19-year-old self, I would say that you need to seek to understand what your purpose is, so that gives your life more meaning at an earlier age.
If I were to go back into my youth, I would say I would start around 18, 20. I would say that it is okay to be a leader. You do not have to follow what everyone else is doing just to be noticed or to be cool. It is okay to stand out, and it is okay to move in a manner that people will respect. It is okay to be different and to respect my team, because you cannot be a leader without a team.
Hey man, I liked all those. Hey, shout out to Kavanaugh. Shout out to Dustin, man. He said he'd go back to 18, close his mouth and open his ears. I like that. And I really, I liked everything that everybody said. But it was something how we all chose like 20 and under. You know what I mean? From like 13, 14 all the way up into 18. I went the youngest. But as I listened to all of these, I think the one that stood out to me the most was the one Coach said, the purpose. Like I never even thought about that. Like I didn't really start coming into my purpose until I was in like my late 30s, early 40s. And, I probably started late 30s, didn't really understand it or realize the transition until I was in my early 40s. But man, to get that information at 19 and then apply it, oh my goodness, I could have went forward, projected my life 20 years, 30 years, who knows how far. I'm not saying that it would have changed anything, but I can understand like me now knowing what my purpose is and being on my purpose. I can only imagine like if a child or a young man at 19 would apply that and learn that, man, dude.
Yeah, purpose, man. Like without purpose, you're just doing activities. And I feel like a lot of the guidance you take when you are in your, I guess, your exploratory years, where people are making suggestions that things that you could do, I think that people just tell you things that they would do, but they don't necessarily have a roadmap that goes with it. And not very many people that when you remember were giving you a roadmap that was, you know, something that they even would have done or could have done. They just imagined it, you know. Like when people tell you to go to college, sometimes that's the worst thing that you could tell somebody to go do that doesn't have enough self-discipline to, you know what I'm saying, function on their own, you know. Because if somebody had given me a different roadmap by the time that I was maybe 15, 16 or whatever, and had like my interest tied to maybe joining the military, I probably would have joined sooner and went to college first. You know what I'm saying? And then I maybe would have came back and went to school later. Who knows? You know, but like the information, the timing, and you know what I'm saying, and then really making a decision about what you want your future to look like. And I think too, you know, like it depends on the questions you get asked too. So that is very important. So definitely agreeing with the fact that Coach brought up the purpose piece, because a way to articulate that may change somebody's life. It changes people's lives, you know what I'm saying, today, even in casual conversation.
So the main reason why I brought that up, if I may, I'm sorry, Roland, you're muted, bro. I think you're talking. Roland, you're muted. Roland, you're muted.
We cannot hear you, Roland.
I don't
Oh,
think
he's
he's
on the phone.
talking.
He's on the phone. He's on the phone. Okay.
Oh, he on the phone.
No, so the main reason that I brought it to the table is for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think when you get a person focused on their purpose, what that helps them to understand that they do not have to take a blueprint from somebody else, right? They're trying to figure it out for themselves. That's the idea behind it. So they're going through the mental analysis for themselves, for their lives, what's specific for me, so forth and so on. But the other thing to me that I think is ideal for anybody at that age frame is that it helps them to quiet the white noise going on around them. Because you got all types of other distractions that catch hold of young men and pull them over here and pull them over there and all this other stuff. But when you're focusing on your purpose and you have that in mind, even if you don't know what it is, just to get you to think in that, you know, in that vein at that age, it helps you to understand that there is something out there specific for me. I can move in that direction and I need to be kind of laser focused on that. Sure, it's okay for me to live life because I know a lot of people like to live their best life. It's okay to live life, but living life outside of the parameters of your purpose is dangerous.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Was you gonna say
Young
something?
lady.
Yeah, sorry about that, fella. My daughter, she had FaceTime me, so I was talking to her. But
No, you good.
that's why I always say you have to expose your children early and often to plenty of things, a plethora of things. That way they can find their niche, find their purpose, find what their passion is instead of just going into what's popular, because that's what most people do. They go, oh, well, this is popular and that's why I like this. I like it. But if you expose them to a gambit of things, then they can create their own little realm of what their passion is instead of going off of everybody else's.
You could definitely avoid being trendy.
Muted, Antoine.
Oh, sorry. That's what scares me with these kids today. It's like they're getting exposed even without the parents' guidance. You know, they're just getting exposed to around the world and things that honestly they shouldn't be seeing at the age they're seeing it. Straight up, I'm telling you, it's changed the whole playing ground. You know, playgrounds are empty now. That's the sad thing.
I apologize. I was trying to write the note down. I'm gonna need for later on in the show. Since we talked about control and leadership, let's try to define it. So, what are some key distinctions between control and leadership? You know, I think in certain cases, it's more clear, and I think in other situations, it's not as clear. So, whoever want to jump on this grenade first, feel free to do so.
Are we talking about in a relationship or in one's
Talk
life?
about whichever way
Okay.
you want to spin it. You know, you can talk about work environments, you can talk about relationships, you can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. Just specify what you're talking about so the audience will be able to understand.
I would say when you look at control versus leadership, a person that's controlling wants to make the decisions for the other person. they won't allow them to be cognizant or think freely within whatever realm, whether it's work, whether it's home, whether it's a spouse or whatever. When you are a leader, you give options and you allow them to cycle through their mind to say, hey, the best option for this might be this. And that's where you can actually lead. You can say, well, why don't you look at this or look at that? Whereas a person that's controlling to just say, hey, do it like this. Well, this is how I know how to do it, so do it like that. And that's the only way to get it done, instead of allowing that person to actually think and training that person to take your position just in case you aren't there. And most of us, we don't do that. We want to run it how we run it, and our way is the only way.
I think there's a form of control. Like if you're dealing with something, you're trying to get a control of it. You're trying to handle it. You're trying to tame the beast, right? You're trying to control that. I think you're leading the people that's going to help you execute what you need to execute, right? Those are the ones you lead, but you're trying to get a control of the situation in which you're dealing with. That's what I think I would look at control. You can't control what others do. You can lead them, you can give them advice, do all that good stuff, but the actual control of the situation is your responsibility.
I know you asked about distinctions, but I kind of want to give like an umbrella statement first. I think when you look at control and leadership, there's some similarities. First and foremost, I think both of them exist in the facet of either authenticity or illusion. So when you look at first and foremost for a person who is a leader, who have the legitimate power that was given to them through a higher authority, and they understand how to move from legitimate power using referent power and reward power all the way down through informal power, right? And the four aspects of informal power, they understand how to not just lean on the legitimate authority, but they understand how their character makes them a more well-rounded leader. On the other side, control is only granted through some sort of authority that actually yields it. Most people like to exist in a space to where they want you to believe that they have control based upon a thing, or make you believe that they are a leader based upon the stories that they tell you, or based upon the way that they carry themselves, and so forth and so on. So when you look at control and leadership, they can look very similar in certain spaces, because based upon the people that you're dealing with, they either want to control you through some sort of fictitious authority that does not exist. I'll give you a perfect example. Um, I hate to go here early, so forgive me. I give you a perfect example. We talk about it all the time. Pretty Women, at one point in time, that was a control mechanism. And so with that being said, men pursued Pretty Women for, and it's not just based upon the aesthetics, the appearance. It's aesthetics, it's appearance, it's hair, it's skin texture, it's body, body formation, all of that great stuff. So that at one particular point in time was a form of control. You heard it years ago. You got to use what you got to get what you want. That is control. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's really not control. It's an illusion of control. Transition to where we are now. What you have now is people, men will say stuff like I say all the time. Pretty goes out the door after the word hello. Because at the end of the day, once we are already conversing, I don't really care how pretty you are. I want to understand your character. I want to understand who you are. And so now when we look at control versus leadership, again, the same thing on the other side of leadership, right? And most of us been in the Army, so we are in leadership positions based upon position or rank. But then by that same token, you have those people who did not have position, who did not have rank, but they were still what we would call informal leaders. So there are very clear distinctions between control and leadership, but there are also a lot of similarities. And what we have to do is be careful, especially when we're trying to use it in a detrimental fashion.
I think both have an element of each. Like leadership has control and control has leadership. Like leadership might set philosophy. So to kind of go along with what Coach was just saying is that even in formal situations, leadership is the philosophy. This is what everybody's aiming towards, right? And then you put together control mechanisms to stay within the boundaries of the philosophy. You know what I mean? So you might be able to designate certain people that are capable of leading certain tasks, or meeting certain metrics, right? Because every metric still requires a level of leadership, because the leadership level can't be where you're telling every single person what to do. You should be able to tell it to a few, and then the few people that you tell it to should be able to accomplish said task through the many. If the leadership is quality, if it's been, and if the philosophy is something that everybody can buy into. I think leadership definitely sets the conditions for people to buy into a philosophy, a narrative, or whatever. Now the control piece happens where somebody has to manage and perform and accomplish certain benchmarks in order to define the leadership philosophy. Meaning, like, if you said that your goal is to be the best, best brake mechanic in your area, right? But if you don't work on any brakes for 3 months, what activity are you doing to accomplish the leadership philosophy? You know what I'm saying? Of said task of accomplishing being the best brake repair person. So I think control manages the activity that validates the leadership boundaries in the philosophy.
Did you want to add to Antoine?
I agree with that, actually. Like I said, you only have control of the situation, what you're trying, and you lead the people that's going to come in and help you do what you need to do over there.
Yeah, I get that, man. All great points, man.
So
Go ahead, Chris.
this is me asking. I am asking a question. So would you say that actually I think Vic put it in the chat. Control is managing the situation, and leadership is managing to people to handle said situation.
Yeah.
Is that what I am getting?
That's how I see it.
All right.
Yeah, when it comes to like performative, but like maybe relationship stuff, it has similar, like if it's a traditional relationship, it may have similar things in it. Like somebody may want to be in leadership over the entire relationship while other people in the relationship control certain things. So you have a trade-off of what's important to the other person, you know what I'm saying, and a mutual agreement, and you stay within the boundaries. That's, you know what I'm saying, that's how you work together.
So here's what's getting ready to happen. I'm going to play this clip, and then we're going to talk about it. 53 seconds long. Whoever want to jump on it first, feel free to do so. Remember, the topic is control versus leadership.
Where are you off to?
To errands.
Why?
And she split up with her boyfriend.
And?
And she wanted someone to speak to.
There's a thing called a phone.
It's not quite the same, is it?
Not my problem.
It won't be that long.
No.
Tom, she needs
No.
me.
She don't need anything from you. She probably pissed him off.
But I said I
No. That's the end of it. How was work?
I didn't go in.
Why?
Wasn't feeling very well.
And now you feel better to see Erin.
I thought I might be...
That's another day's wages wasted.
I'm sorry.
Holy crap. Okay. Wow.
That's abuse and control. Are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, can't do that. Can't do that. That's not. Yeah, that's control. That's controlling the situation, controlling the person, dictating to them what to do. I mean, no, that's wrong and right across 100% of the board.
That was. Go ahead, Roland. I'm sorry.
Okay. I think he's simply showing his fears and insecurities and pushing them off on her, saying, because I'm of the belief that you can't tell another grown person what to do. I mean, you can, out of respect, they should respect you, But when you don't feel that respect, when you scared that your desires won't be met, you control, you manipulate, and he might well be her dad.
Okay. On one hand, I see what you all are saying. But on the other hand, and this may have me looking a little weird when I say this, but I can kind of understand where he is coming from. You didn't feel well enough to go to work, but you feel well enough to go listen to your friend harp and complain about a relationship that she probably damaged. I can see both sides of this. I would not go about it that way because, as Roland said, she is not my child. She is supposed to be valued counsel in my relationship. However, I kind of see his point.
So I was gonna play devil's advocate.
Hey, me too. I'm about to play devil's
I
advocate.
was, but Chris kind of beat me to it. But here's the other side to it as well. There's so many unknowns that led up to this conversation that anything outside of what you can physically see with your eyes is an assumption. And for me, when I say that, I'm just saying that, and Roland, I got what you're saying, and I'm not saying you're wrong at all, right? But the other side to it is that we don't know what happened in their relationship leading up to that point. We don't know some of the things that happened behind the scene up to that conversation. Did he handle the conversation in an aggressive format? Absolutely. No questions asked. That's the one thing I can say. I think we all can say that that's a fact. But what led him up to the point of being aggressive? Is he just naturally aggressive? If he's naturally aggressive, then why did you make the decision to be in a relationship with a person that you see is naturally aggressive? So that's the point that I'm saying. Like, I'm not pushing back because I know when just by the carnal eyes, we can look at this and say, oh, he is totally wrong. Agreed. I agree 100%. But there's some other stuff to it as well. And anything that we add to, in addition to what we see, is an assumption.
Okay, but we said within that clip. Of course, we don't know. We're said within that clip. So to say what led to that doesn't matter. We said within that clip. A lot. I sensed abuse within that clip, right? But I'm sticking to the clip. I don't know what led. That wasn't the question. The question is, was that control in that clip? Now, if you want to start talking about the whole movie and what led to that, that's another story. But let's stick to within that clip is all I'm saying. And
You're
within
right.
that clip, that's what we're talking about. Really don't care what led to it. That was sheer control.
That is why I said what I said. I see
That's all
both
I'm
sides
saying.
of it.
Like, I'm not going to add
The
links
way
all the
that
time.
the way that he came across that does not look like it is a actual relationship.
So like, based on just the clip, right? Because I have yet to speak on this yet, and I just wrote, leadership defines boundaries, controls, manages the activity within the boundaries, right? And before I explained that, I said there's a little bit of control in leadership, and there's a little bit of leadership in control. Obviously, there's some boundaries that have been discussed, and by virtue of how succinct his answers were, there definitely was a conversation that preceded it. You know what I'm saying? I guess, yeah, I get it. You can speculate whatever you want to speculate in 53 seconds, but you have to play devil's advocate to have a conversation that makes sense. And I took from the clip that he's had this discussion before. This lady has had, you know what I'm saying, certain situations that is challenged his ability to trust. There's trust issues there. And simply based on the fact that she was getting ready to go see a friend, but she wasn't well enough to go to work. This isn't a new situation. She signed up for it. He signed up for it. So whatever they dealing with, they submitting to each other's, you know what I'm saying, inconsistencies, you know, even within that 53 seconds. So I really believe that outside of violence, people just got to accept whatever they, you know what I'm saying, whatever they accepted from the other person, and, you know what I'm saying, and deal with it as it sits. So on the surface, if you just looked at it just from words and everything like that, yeah, there's definitely a lot of control issues in there, but the control issues stem from what one would perceive as a trust issue. Is it leadership? it still is leadership, but it's not necessarily my brand of leadership. Some people's leadership is more controlling than others. Like, for the same reason that when we look at North Korea, you call it a dictatorship, it's still a brand of leadership that some people, you know what I'm saying, are okay with. You know, communists had leadership, democracies have leadership, whether we like the way they run policy or not, and even the way that they execute it. Some policies are executed with more brute force than others. You know what I'm saying? Putin doesn't run Russia the same way, you know, our president does here. But if it, you know what I'm saying, create some sort of predictability, and so be it. Because if he's responsible for it, he understands her better than we do in that 53 seconds. So, hey, man, look, I think he was just responding based on the environment. So, and plus, we ain't in that relationship either.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is, and again, this is why I say what I say. When we're looking at it from a leadership and control aspect, this is why I started off with legitimate power when it comes down to leadership, right? Because the control that exists in the span of leadership comes from a higher authority if you subscribe to that. Now, moving forward, you chose to be in the relationship, you're in the relationship. So I am not the person that will automatically pull the control card, because at the end of the day, you have a choice. So if you're going to stay in it, don't sling control, make a move. It's that simple. But too many times, I think what we do, and it's easy to do it from an outside perspective, right? But too many times, what I have seen within the span of relationship, I've seen one person use the word control as a form of manipulating the other person. That has nothing to do with this clip. I'm again, devil's advocate, right? So we got to be careful with the term control in relationship. Is what, it's easy to say what we just seen was controlling. Now, why won't she leave? If you stay there, if she chooses to stay in that, then you can't complain about it being controlling if you're going to choose to stay in it, because there is nothing that is fixing you there. Relationship is a choice. So that's why I say what I say when I talk about leadership and control and things of that nature.
I get that. I get that. I want to add too. Let me see if I still got my note up here. If I ripped it up. So, because Antoine has said something about situations, right? So let's kind of sort of, I want to add some kind of sort of add to this relationship and add to this situation, but I'm gonna kind of spin it a different way. But it's gonna be kind of similar, but it's gonna have a different twist to it. So you and your girl, like you got a main girl, right? And your main girl have another friend, and they want to go to the roughest, raunchiest, worst club in the city, right? But it's her girl's birthday. So she like, I'm trying to go. But you like, nah, I ain't really trying to have you up in there. You know what I mean? And then there's an issue. What happens next? And then you tell her, I don't want you to go. Is that control, or is that like leading because you understand that kind of sort of what may go on inside of that? I mean, we talking about the roughest club in Chicago or Detroit or Atlanta, or, we talking about you know what I'm saying, where stuff go down. So where does control, or I don't know if it's leadership, I don't know if it's boundaries, I don't know if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Leadership
But I
is
kind of
boundaries.
wrote it down and then I marked it out. But then after I played this, I was like, well, let me shoot it out here and kind of see where it goes.
I think leadership implies boundaries too. I think when you set, like the do's and don'ts, because those are your boundaries. If
Mhm.
So like if a person if a person decides to make a decision that jeopardizes their safety, that's a personal choice. Like Roland said earlier, you can't control nobody. If they want to do something, they're motivated enough, then they're gonna make that decision. Now, what you got to have on the other side of that is resolve and some level of confidence to stand on what you said. Like, you know how you see social media's scenarios float around. Well, there was this one where a similar situation like you're describing, going to a party on the rough side of town, and guy told a girl in the scenario, hey, if you go over there to that party, I'm breaking up with you. And then she like, I don't care. So she broke up with him, and then that night something happened to it where, it was a sexual assault involved. And she called him. He's like, I told you not to go. Don't call me anymore. You know what I'm saying? So with every decision you make, there's consequence. Everybody doesn't have to deal with the repercussions of your own choices, you know, and everybody deserves a chance to get off if something changes, you know. And a lot of times people ride the merry-go-round of speculation without giving the other person a chance to make a decision. So to some degree, that's a manipulative behavior, especially if it's done intentionally. Some people are very indecisive and manipulate people unintentionally. But in that situation where I just gave the scenario to add on to yours, everybody reserves the right to disengage as they see fit, because if that person chose to go to that party regardless, everybody gets a chance to make a decision that makes sense for them.
But you know,
This is
I
why
would
I
say
previously
if
stated
you're
that.
gonna go, go ahead, Chris. I'll go after you.
This is why I previously stated before when we had the live stream about protection that there's no difference between control and protection, because control involves a set of rules that you need to follow.
I would say with protection though, here's the main piece. Just because you want independence doesn't mean it automatically comes with protection. You know what I'm saying? Like independence means that you can afford protection.
No,
And
that is where I was going.
Yep.
That is where I was going.
The
You
only
cannot protect someone who was willingly throwing themselves to the wolves.
correct. You know,
If
so
you are going
like
to the roughest and toughest club in your city after I asked you not to, you are going to get what you get because I asked you not to do it, and I am not doing it to control you. I am doing it because I am supposed to protect you. Protection is supposed to be preventative. So if I know where you are going is going to be a detriment to you, and I am going to have to come out of my way to fix whatever situation you get into directly or indirectly, then I have to say something. And if you still go about doing what you wish to do, then my hands are tied and I am going to leave you to your devices.
But it all depends. Listen, it all depends on how close you are with the person, right? Because it's easy to say, well, you ain't coming back to this over here. So that depends on the situation. But with control comes a form of leadership. With leadership comes a form of protection. I mean, they're all coexisting, right? But if I'm telling my girl and I'm protecting her, saying, listen, you're going in the roughest neighborhood for what? A drink with a girl? That's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to be a discussion. I'm telling her it's not going to happen. So that's my role.
In that situation, Antoine, when you tell her no, are you being controlling or are you leading?
I'm leading her.
Or are you setting
I'm leading
boundaries?
her. I am controlling her, the situation, and I'm protecting her with my leadership.
Is that not what the guy was doing in that clip?
No.
Right? No, he wasn't. He was being that guy in the clip. First of all, he was aggressive. So I mean, he already had it. He was always in pistosity, but
hold on, we'll be done with the clip. I don't want to spend too much back on the clip. I want to move to the next area.
If I'm telling her she's not going, that's my leadership protecting her. There's not going to be a back and forth discussion. I'm telling her she's not going, right? Now, if I'm in a serious relationship to her, then I would tell her if she decides to go, then just know that's detrimental to the relationship we have. Because now you're putting me into a situation that I know going down that rabbit hole is not going to be good, because you're going to figure I let you do it with this one time, and you're going to think, well, I can do it another time. It's going to happen inevitable. It's inevitable. So she's not going to go. But I'm going to make it clear to her if she does go, it's really let her know that it's detrimental to you and I. So make your decision there, because you can't control what other people do, basically.
I
Sometimes. Go ahead, Roland. I'm sorry.
I think when I look at control, especially in relationships and situations like this, I look at how some women may say, well, you ain't getting none if you do this. Or men may say, well, if you do that, I ain't paying for it, as if she ain't got her own money. That's a form of control and manipulation to lead a person to do what you want versus what they want, having nothing to do with dangers or anything like that. That's what I'm thinking.
Can I ask a question before I give my comment? Why is she telling me about this? Is she looking for my feedback? She just want me to know where she's going? Is she's looking to see if I'm okay with it? What would be the purpose of her informing me about what's going on?
I guess if it's your girl, just to inform you of her whereabouts.
Okay, I asked that for a reason because I want to make sure. Cause I want to go back. 'Cause I think we're putting them together and they don't go together. Leadership and control are not synonymous. Leadership is leadership. Control is control. If we, and again, this is why I started with legitimate power, because under leadership, well, not so much as under, but leadership happens under legitimate power. Therefore, you can exercise certain type of aspects based upon that. But leadership at its finest is simply just influence. Therefore, if we look at any form of the definition of leadership and we look at influence, then you will exercise control over yourself because you understand that I'm not cool with that place. So I don't have to tell you not to go. You will automatically decide not to go because when you mention it to me, I gave my opinion based upon the place. I'm not telling you not to go. You make a decision. You're an adult. But just understand once you choose that decision, now you're operating outside of the influence of leadership. You see what I'm saying? Now this kind of goes back to what Chris said, right? You go out there. I'm sorry. I can't remember whether it was Chris or Vic. You go out there and something happened to you. You just made the decision for whatever happened to happen. And then who's going to be the first person that you're going to call? So we and going back to it, you hear it all the time, right? I'm an adult. I should be able to do what I want, blah, 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 blah. You're absolutely right. That's why you should be able to make adult decisions based upon what you say your priorities are, not necessarily by living my best life and all that other great stuff. Because again, leadership is leadership and control is control. If we exercise leadership properly, there is no control but self-control.
Yeah, but how many people throw this in your face? Yeah, it's not like you told me not to go, though. It's not like you really told me. No, I'm making it clear to you not to go. So you can't come back and say, well, it's not like you really told me. You said to go. You said to go. You didn't say not to go, but you said to go. I'm just giving you the feedback that I would tell you.
No, I got you.
Yeah. So technically, you're not exactly protecting me because you're telling me to go.
Right. But to your point, that person has already displayed that character long before that party came up. So at that point in time, if you chose to stay with that person, that's what you've accepted. But trust and believe the person who will respond to that, they shown you before that they had that in them.
No, but I'm just sticking within the box. I'm not going to go before and all that. I'm sticking within this scenario that he created. I don't like to put ad libs in there like before they showed me this. I'm talking about that particular sentence. I'm saying it's not like you told me not to go. With what you just said, it's not like you told me not to go. That's all I'm saying.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just saying, for me, I'm the type of guy, I'm gonna tell you not to go. So you can't come back and say, well, it's not like, no. I told you not to go. And I said, if you do decide to go, there's repercussions between you and me. So there's no misunderstanding when I lock the door and change the locks. None. We had a clear understanding, right? Because like I said, I'm not living at you. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
And I'm not saying that that's not what you would do. I'm agreeing that that's what you would do.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, if like what Uncle Junior say, that's my girl. That means I know her. And if I know her, I've been around her for a minute, so I understand what she is capable of. So at this point, at this stage in the relationship, I understand that she is capable of making decisions based upon the thing that she said she wants, relationship.
So would you say those are poor decisions, what she's trying to do?
If she decides to go to the worst club in the city of Detroit, absolutely, that's a poor decision.
So from previous experiences, she's used to making bad decisions. Then
correct. Right? That's exactly what I'm saying.
Then you'd want to protect her and tell her not to go.
No, I want her to get the hell away from me because she shouldn't even be in my face.
So then you're making it clear that you're with somebody that's toxic and you shouldn't be with them in the first place.
She's
done it previously.
Because now she's a detriment to me. Because I got to go out there and there's no telling what I'm going to face when I'm going to rescue her. And
but she was like that before, though. Remember, you're used to that.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying. That person you should not be around. This isn't Lancelot, and I don't have no doggone sword called Excalibur. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not coming to rescue nobody. You put yourself in that, give me a call from the jail. I might put up some bail money and send you some cigarettes.
Sometimes leadership means taking control of a situation. Sometimes, if a woman is willing to do that, you have to take control of the situation for self and remove yourself. Because if she is going to make a decision like that and put you in a position where you have to do something out of your norm on purpose, then you do not need to be with her, because she is not of sound mind, or she believes that she can do whatever she wants and somebody is going to save her. I say this all of the time. You cannot act independently in a union, because it is about the union. I do not believe in protecting people, men or women, that put themselves in positions on purpose. Like they are not smart enough to understand that what they are about to do is dumb. And it can be very, very bad for everybody. And if you are not willing to listen to me and not think that I am trying to control your every move based off of the information that you gave me, then you don't need to be with me, because I am not trying to control you. I am simply saying, if you go here and you know this is bad, something bad 9 times out of 10 is going to happen. Now, if you want to stop in, have your drink, say happy birthday, and come home, that is different. But if you are going in there and partying and having drinks like this is the girl party or whatever, you can stay there and I am going to leave you to your own devices. You're muted, Antoine.
Yeah, I'm
like
going
to
to
say
say it
something.
again. So that means she's been doing it all along, and you finally hit your boiling point. I'm saying, if from what Garfield is saying, within the square of that box, this woman was a good woman. She's a good woman. She's just I'm assuming, in my mind, she's just making this one decision now because she's not like that. Obviously, I've been with her, so she would know that ain't happening, but she would know. So I'm saying, within that square box, if you know you've got a good girl, she's not used to making decisions like that. That's why you're with her, right? So now she decides to make a decision like that. I'm asking from that standpoint, do you let her go or you don't?
If we have the conversation and she still decides to put herself in danger, yes. No matter how bad it hurts, yes. Because at the end of the day, she is going to
Okay.
do something that is going to cause me to do something out of pocket. And I do not want to get put in that situation. I should not have to get put in that situation, especially if you know better. She's not dumb. Like you said, she has been
Right.
doing this before. She is not stupid. I do not believe in patronizing women and treating them like they're children when they have a sound mind. If you are going to do that after we have this discussion, I'm leaving. Call the police. Do not call me. I am not coming, because I told you what I thought about it, and I knew that 9 times out of 10, this was going to happen. Protection and leadership is preventative sometimes.
I think when you're in a relationship, as what we're talking about right now in this discussion, is that you're in a relationship to protect each other from yourself sometimes. I think that that's part of the leadership call too. Everything you gentlemen were saying, if you go back and watch that previous video clip for 53 seconds, fits exactly what I was trying to explain about that guy. You don't want to assume the liability from her bad decision making, right? Especially if you have to have a strategic exit, like Antoine brought up. Like, you have to consider the weight of the relationship depending on the choices you make, right? Because Antoine's looking at it like, well, you can't get divorced overnight, and if you got a whole bunch of stuff, tied together, you have to be able to, make, a strategic call. Everything you gentlemen were saying is exactly why I read the devil's advocate side of how that guy was talking to that chick, you know what I'm saying, on the 53-second clip. Everything you guys saying is about him assuming responsibility and liability for her mistakes. And leadership steps in when a person has made a series of mistakes, not control in terms of, because she obviously had some independence about herself. She was getting ready to go. She already, called off from the job. So she has you know what I'm saying, some level of independence. But if she's made mistakes in the past, like Antoine highlighted, Coach brought up a pattern of behavior, you know, even Chris spoke on it, and Roland did too, in terms of like somebody stepping in and making a decision when that person's cup runneth over with issues and it runneth onto your plate and you are still responsible for it. Sometimes you have to step in and say, hell no, because like, here's the other part too. You can't have the least amount of resources and think you can make the rules when other people have to come in and clean up behind you every time you make a decision. And we're talking about not treating adults like children, but you responding to the behavior you're seeing presented. Okay. So all of us at some point had to be reined in from something, you know, when we didn't know as much as what we know now. And people don't have the same experiences that we haven't had the same liability that we've had, and don't necessarily have the same obligations, because most people have a tough time taking care of themselves individually. Those people that can't take care of themselves individually are going to make your life hard. We all understand that. So if they are demonstrating a behavior that's going to cost you some level of heartache that's unnecessary, all for the sake of being defiant and competitive instead of complimentary, then you definitely need to exit from the situation. Like the guy in the clip really don't need to be doing nothing with her. You know what I'm saying? But because he has to, because obviously they have some connections, like Antoine said, he can't easily pull away, then the line gets blurred between, you know, control, leadership, manipulation. It becomes very ambiguous. But understand something. Somebody is always reflecting what is being projected. So if a person is being defiant, it's a lack of trust. It's not just being defiant. They don't trust you. You see what I'm saying? So it's a much bigger indicator than what we're looking at. And I think that at some point you have a right to exercise your boundaries, just like they exercise their boundaries, but understand that the outcomes of you exercising your boundaries are going to look different than the, you know, the other person exercising their boundaries. So this is why I always say you can only have the outcomes that your personal accountability can afford, and it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with anything more than your personal accountability. So people react based off of your personal accountability. They reflect your personal accountability. So if you're reckless, they're going to treat you reckless.
That's why I would say to have, if that's why, like in the beginning, when I talk about relationships and it's a 50-50, that's why I believe that you get all this, like the girl that I would be with wouldn't even entertain the thought of asking me. She would just tell her friend, I know him, he ain't gonna let me go anyway, so forget me. She wouldn't even, because she would know. I would look at her like, what are you wasting my time for? I got to do something. Like, you already know. Is that
control or leadership though for you?
That's her knowing my personality, that don't waste my time with garbage like that. I have no time for it.
But do you consider that to be control or leadership based on the way you said that?
Well, she doesn't need to ask the question because she knows I'm not going to entertain the thought of answering it. She doesn't. We know each other so well. Like, if I know she does not like to go to the gym with me, I know she doesn't, right? And there's this one event at the gym that I really want her to go with me. I ain't even gonna bother. I'll probably slip her a note, but I'm not gonna entertain the thought, and I don't want her to entertain the thought of asking me. I don't want that because I got more important things to do than to tell you no. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I think you should have that level of understanding with the person you're with. Just like she would know there's boundaries that I would set between me doing things too. I wouldn't say, oh, I'm going out with my buddies that I drink it. She know I don't drink like that. So where you going? I wouldn't even tell her I'm going. Like, no. That's all I'm saying.
Go ahead, Roland.
I think leadership inherently means that I have I'm responsible. I'm the responsible party. So whether I'm in charge at home, whether I'm in charge at work, the buck stops with me. Not that I just, beat my fist on the table, but since I'm responsible, if the crap hits the fan, I have to react. So I have say so over what goes on. And that's not me controlling another person. That's saying, like my daughter, my daughter was in the 12th grade, I gave her money and she went with her friend. It was a Friday. And I gave them the same speech every week. I told them, hey, if you get in trouble over some dumb stuff, don't call me. And she went out. Her and her friends was at JCPenney stealing shirts. You stealing shirts with money in your pocket. So my other daughter called me. I'm like, why are you calling me? So then, click, I hang up. So she called her mother. Her mother called me. I'm like, I'm not getting her out. I told her before she left what the consequences were. So she got to deal with the consequences. As a leader, you got to stick. If you set the rules and you say this is that, you got to stick to this is that. You can't just say, okay, well, that's my baby. Okay, well, that's my wife. This is what I said. And it's not the point that I say. Now, if I say you can't go because it's dangerous, that's different from me saying you can't go because I'm scared you're going to leave me for another man. Because if it's that, then I have some trauma to deal with, whether it be in my past or within the relationship, and we may need to separate.
I like that. I like that. And
I
hey,
like that,
appreciate everybody who's watching tonight. Appreciate everybody who's in the chat, all those different things. I appreciate y'all gentlemen, all y'all opinions, all y'all words and everything that's been said so far. And you know what? And since y'all know everything, and some of y'all already kind of talked around it, but let's go on and punch it. So at the end of the day, can effective leadership exist without an element of control? And explain.
No, I don't think so.
Somebody has to set the boundaries. Like,
yeah.
That's why I said explain it.
And that's just what I said earlier. Like, there's an element of control within leadership, and there's an element of leadership within control. It's like, look at it as a yin and yang. You know what I'm saying? Because at the leadership level, you still have to control the few people that, you know, looking at it from a work standpoint or work architecture. Leadership is ran by a few people that can influence many people, and then the many people influence everybody else with the leadership that is being given to them, you know, provided. Somebody has to control how it's being distributed. It can't just be, you know, people picking and choosing. People have to buy in. So the mutual respect piece creates the dialogue that says, you know what, I'm going to trust your leadership, do what you say, stay within these boundaries. And if I get in a situation, I'm going to call before I make a decision, you know, that may put you in a bad situation. You know what I'm saying? They have to be symbiotic, because if you have leadership with no control, you might be in a situation where you have a dictatorship. Because if you have control with no leadership, you have, you know what I'm saying, a different, you don't have democracy anymore, right? So, like, I think control and leadership is a true type of mutual respect, and it requires empathy. I think one has more empathy than the other, because control don't care. You know what I'm saying? But leadership has to have empathy to come up with a reasonable strategy to get people to buy in. You can't get people to buy in without empathy.
I think that all leadership has control elements to it. It's just like we live in the so-called United States of America, yet I live in Texas. And if I cross a Texas boundary, I can't say, well, we do this in Texas, in Mississippi, because they're going to say, well, in Mississippi, these are the controls. These are the laws. These are the, this is how we lead over here. So when you're talking leadership, whatever you set your boundaries, your laws, your rules at, that's what the control measures are. Control has to be in everything.
So this is where I sound different, because effective leadership means a commitment that actually exists. When a commitment exists, the leader does not have to exert control.
And I'm going to even say this. This is how simple I see it. I'm going to control the situation.
Hold up.
It's a bad area. I'm going to lead. You're not going. That's it. I took control of the situation. It's a bad area.
Making his point. Let Coach finish making his point.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, when you look at effective leadership, right? You look at effective leadership. This is the difference. You got leadership and effective leadership. So under the concept of effective, that means that both parties, the leader and the led, have accepted the commitment to something higher than themselves. So the leader does not have to exercise control, because the led have already made the commitment to what it is that they're working towards. Vic, I like the fact you brought up the work scenario, because the work scenario relationships make sense. Anytime an employee does not conform to what the parameters are with their works, with their what do you call it, the job description, If they do not conform to the job description and the behavior that is listed under the core values of the company, this relationship will be severed. That's it. So if you can't control yourself, then the control that the leader exhibits at that point is the one that extends the boundary and puts you on the outside of it. So that's how I would look at it. So effective leadership would mandate that both parties have accepted the fact that the relationship, the company, is more important than you or me. Therefore, I don't have to control you. You exercise self-control.
Bingo.
But to me, I'm saying the parameters that we set beforehand,
Yeah.
those are the control. I don't have to, because they already set. You know
Right.
what it is. That's the control. I don't have to tell you what to do. You know what to do. And
Absolutely.
then when you go outside of that,
And that's why I said manages the activity within the boundaries, because leadership is up here and it comes with the philosophy, the narrative, and everything else. Everybody down here gets managed according to the philosophy above. So the activity within has to coincide with the behavior, like Coach just said, that's conducive to being part of the team, the organization, or whatever word you want to use to encompass the entire thing. The minute that you operate outside of the philosophy, the boundaries, the control mechanisms that everybody else is subjected to, what do you think you're going to end up at? You know, look at John Morant. People trying to make apologies for him, but he's a contract NBA player for a professional organization. So you are required to exhibit professional behavior that does not misrepresent the organization that you work for.
Yep.
So the minute that you step outside of that, you know, those that binding contract, and you misrepresent yourself, and you not only misrepresent yourself, you misrepresent the organization that pays you, and they reserve the right at will to figure out what to do with your behavior if it's unbecoming of the organization.
So can I ask a question?
Can I ask a question? Let me ask mine. I'll ask you. It's a clarifying question, or to make sure that I'm on the same level playing field as Coach.
As was mine, so we will probably get to the same point.
All right. So based off of this, what I'm hearing from Coach, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that based off the question, can effective leadership exist without an element of control? I think your answer, if I was to answer it, would be no. However, can effective leadership? No. However, the control is self-control. So no, it can exist without an element of control, but that control is self-control.
Absolutely. That's what
It
makes
does
it
not
effective.
come from leadership. The control comes from the person that's being led and knows the rules. That was
Correct.
going to be my question.
Correct. That's what makes it effective. And look at it from this perspective. Whenever the leader puts himself above the subordinates and make it all about them, then the leader is now self-centered, and no subordinate really wants to follow them. Therefore, the leader does not have influence. Whenever the subordinate makes it about them, they become a detriment to the team, and then the leader removes that person from the team and replaces them with someone who can conform to the concept of the entire organization. This is the exact same thing that happens in relationships. I hate to say it that way.
The leader is taking control, though, right?
The leader is protecting the organization. The
Nobody's
leader
taking control of the situation.
Right.
No?
But
Okay.
what I'm trying to help people to understand, for the most part, because there's this negative stigma with control. When you hear the word control, it is automatically a negative stigma with it. But sometimes what you have to understand is that the relationship, well, not sometimes, all the time, until people understand that the relationship is the most important person in the relationship, not you or me, then you're always going to say, well, what about me? What about me? What about me? And you will hear it in the midst of conversations. Even when you tell somebody about their behavior, they will automatically come back and say, well, last month you did this thing. And we talked about this on Friday night, fellas, right? That's just that person who is refusing to take responsibility for their own behavior because they're trying to render themselves innocent and not even realizing that, again, the relationship is mandating us to have this very difficult conversation so that we can come back in agreement with the reason why we came together. So if we cannot do that, then at that point, now the element of control comes in to where we have to sever ties and then find a replacement for that individual.
in certain scenarios, like on the self-control piece, if you can't control yourself, you lose the freedom to control yourself. You know, like if you want to act wild out here and not control your emotions, don't be shocked when you have some legal ramifications that go along with the behavior. And guess what you know? Guess what you don't have anymore? Freedom, independence, and somebody else is controlling you, you know, or managing your activity throughout the day. Like I was saying before. So like effective leadership is very key. And if you can't submit to it somewhere, somebody will make you submit to it. Because if you can't control yourself, somebody else will.
But I'm going to say, even reading that question, the effective leadership exists without an element. I'm going to say leadership cannot exist without control. You have to take control of the situation and lead to the best situation, about the best outcome. But you're taking control of the situation. So like I said, and I keep saying it, you're controlling the situation by telling her it's a bad neighborhood. I don't see you out there. I don't want this to come between you and I. I'm taking control of that. And I'm leading you and telling you in a protective way, don't go.
See,
I mean, it has to have some form of element of control.
It has an element of control, Antoine. I think the element of control is the rules that we set. So if I say, hey, we don't do this, that's not how we roll in this house.
Right.
That's, you know, we set these rules. So you trying to go, the leader still falls underneath the rules. So he's not above the rules, and he's not saying, well, I think this and I think that, I say this. No, we said this. So this is what guides us. So neither one of us is above it. You can't go above it by doing this, putting yourself in harm's way. That's not how we do. If you do that,
but if you're
because that's the part that gets missed. I think sometimes with this control thing, they forget that everybody falls under the same rules. Like there's not a different set of rules. If the rules are we don't do this, then that comes down to me too. I think a lot of times
you're indirectly controlling this. I mean,
you are controlling the situation, but you are not controlling the person.
You can't.
That is the distinction. That is the distinction.
You can't control
you are not controlling other people. You are controlling how you act in your situation. Everyone up here has said self-control.
Right.
That is what it is about. These are the rules. This is what we laid out. This is what we need to happen. If you plan on going above that, we are going to have a conversation. And if you still choose to go above that, then I have to exhibit a level of self-control and go on about my business.
Right.
That is what it is. Controlling the situation could be just that. Leaving.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about control
because you cannot make anybody do anything. Right. You can just say, this is what I think. I think this is a bad idea. You can do what you want. I do not control you. However, there is this thing called consequence.
I want to add to that as well, because I don't want, because again, we're talking situational, and we got to make sure that we understand situations don't happen frequently, right? I mean, let's just be completely transparent. Situations happens periodically. So when a leader needs to control the situation, it is only because the people in the situation do not know how to exercise based upon observation, how to take control of that situation and make the necessary decision needed. And going back to Roland's point, and Chris, and I mean, everybody really, like at that particular point in time, the leader steps in and makes the decision for the team for the greater good. Like Roland said, nobody's outside of the rules. But here's another part I want to add. Leaders, especially when it comes down to effective leadership, effective leaders know how to bring the best out of a person. So let's not forget that, because if we purely talk situational, we're missing the key point to this question: effective leadership. So don't get mad because I take control of the situation today, but the last 10 weeks, you were greatly appreciative of how much growth you've seen in your life because I was able to help you bring the best out of you in situations that you experiencing now. And you're comparing them back to when, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you see that you're handling those situations totally different and you're pleased with the outcome.
I like it. Hey, gentlemen, great feedback on everything so far, man. I think one of the things that, when we're looking at this, and this is exactly what I'm getting ready to talk about or want to throw out there real quick is social media. Like, this is a social media platform. Guys come over here, women come over here to get information. The information that we are saying today can potentially influence someone's life. So with that being said, how do societal norms influence our perception of control and leadership?
I think social media has made it convenient for everybody to feel like their input is sought after. I think a lot of people offer a lot of unsolicited advice, and it gets gobbled up very quickly, and you know what I'm saying, it rebranded as a new lifestyle way of thinking, a philosophy. You know, narratives are very easy to create, you know, and everybody thinks that their input is useful and valid. So I think it stops people from thinking of, you know, speaking when being spoken to, because social media has made it where anybody can access you if you participate and use it. And sometimes you get a lot of inexperienced people at the table with a lot of experienced people, and people are having unnecessary exchanges with the wrong people. So I think that in that you see a lot of people with a lot of status get into the wrong scuffles with the wrong people, and they put themselves in disadvantaged situations. They end up losing their jobs. They, you know, I think everybody has to recognize that every fight is not for them, and every invitation to a fight doesn't have to be answered.
I'm gonna answer it real quick, and then I'll let you guys jump on it to finish it up. So how do societal norms influence our perception of control and leadership? I think you can look at certain different spaces on YouTube and social media, and what you can find is you can find a lot of people over here who may look like that they're putting out leadership information, but they're really putting out control tactics and vice versa. I think, like to Vic's point, there are some good people out there. There's some bad people. If you look at this platform, like I said, this platform is a tool that has been created to be able to give back information. And you know, at some point, some people may be influenced by this. Certain people's perceptions may be switched, altered, changed, or may even stay the same based off of social media. So, you know, I think social media has its place. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it. I think it's, you know, for us, we're using it as a tool to help and to support, you know, but I also understand that there's a negative side of that as well, and how certain people can get wrapped up in the wrong influencer or the wrong information, and it can send them on a downward spiral. Even in their relationships, they're getting information from certain, you know, this certain pill group or whatever like that on social media, and they're trying to take that into their life, and then they're trying to apply it in their situation, but they're applying wrong or ineffective information. So I think that that's one of the negative sides, and how societal norms influence our perception on control and leadership.
I would say for me, so social media is a great outlet to find out things and what you want to do, and you know, fixing things and stuff like that. But people have to realize social media is not real. You don't know the person. You don't really know what's going on. I mean, just because you see him in a Lamborghini doesn't mean he owns it. Just because he says he has, you know, 50 billion whatever, doesn't mean. You have to look at it from an objective point of view. I think that, like, you have to reference. If you look at it and you see something, then you got to ask questions about what you just saw. You should have that person in your life that you can bounce questions off of. You should have that mentor in your life that you can question. But you shouldn't look at social media as the end all be all. I know a lot of people do it now. You know, people are making millions off of it for views and likes, but they're telling you what you want to. There is an element of telling you what you want to hear, so you come back. There is a marketing part of it. So I think people have to step back and realize it's not real. It's there as a tool, but it's not real. You have to do your research behind it. And I think if you separate the two, you know, it'd be better.
Y'all heard it here first. Everything that Antoine said is not real. Fake news.
Don't get me started, man. I got a good one next week.
You muted, Roland.
when we're looking at social media, we're not necessarily looking at society. We're looking at a bunch of people getting on social media, putting out the best efforts of themselves, supposedly. And a lot of you got to choose where you fit in, because everything doesn't work for everybody. Some people want to get on here on social media and use it to get the draws over here, get the draws over there. But if you're trying to establish a family, that's not for you. So that doesn't fall in the parameters of the guidelines for your household. So that's why you got to say, okay, I'm not looking for these people to lead me or to guide me in the ways that I want my family to go. It's entertainment. And when people can't separate entertainment from facts, when they can't say, okay, factual, some things are good for you. And that's why you got to sometimes you just got to eat the meat and spit out the bones.
I'm sorry. When I heard you say that just now, I was thinking to myself, GTD. So it's the episode from Martin.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we explain it out offline. But back to the question, I will simply say it like this: social media gives everybody permission to overvalue their feelings, contort the truth, and ignore the facts. I think that's the issue when it comes down to social media. Everybody believes that how they feel is reality, and it is not. It is your perspective of reality based upon your past experiences. That's it. In fact, you have limited awareness, so you can't even see the authentic nature of reality. You only see it through the lens of your awareness. Therefore, social media is saying how you feel is important. And you will hear it when people talk. I feel, I feel, I feel. In my mind, as soon as I hear those first two words, I automatically know that everything that's coming afterwards is an opinion. And the problem is that in social media, everybody believes that their opinion is facts. Why? We overvalue feelings, we contort the truth, and we ignore the facts. And I think that kind of sums up everything what you just heard these gentlemen talk about.
I'm going to also state that societal norms has removed consequence because everybody believes that they are right, even when they are not. There's always a way to spin it to make them look like the victim when really they were the perpetrator. Um, that would be where I would start.
I think societal norms influence our perception of controlling leadership because bullying and shaming have been removed from what used to be societal norms and used to get results, enforce boundaries, or you got people that had a different type of resiliency. I'm not saying it was useful. It just produced a certain type of people. I think technology definitely influences societal norms. So even if you think about what societal norms are founded on, like every era has something that is their major issue. The like for instance the generation of soldiers that went to or military members that fought in World War II, they were regarded as the United States greatest generation. And somebody would argue that they weren't. Just like when during music has influence on society for a period of time, people refer to like the best era that they grew up in based on the music that they had to listen to. You know what I'm saying? So you see it all the time, like with TV shows when they talk about like what happened in the 2000s, and they talk about like how tech influenced everything, right? So I think technology has a big influence on the way control and leadership is influenced, the way it's manipulated, because here in the Western world, we may have a beef about something that's related to gender equality, and it's just a discussion for us. But somewhere else, there's a ethnic cleansing taking place because they saw the same thing, and they reacted to it way differently. So I think boundaries are relative, when it comes down to it, and outcomes as well. So I just think that every era has its own level of societal norms and what's acceptable and what's not.
I got a I appreciate all of those. I got a situational question. Roland had kind of talked about it. So I want to know, based off of your opinion, is this control or is this leadership? And it's more so coming from a parent perspective. So I understand some of y'all may not be parents, so but you may have an opinion from a child's perspective. So Roland had talked earlier about exposing your children to, certain things like exploring and doing different things like that. So what happens as a parent when you are wanting to, send your child out and expose them to do and try and explore the world and try new things, and then they tell you, you know what, I ain't really trying to do none of that stuff. So when you make them do that, or do you make them do that, and how does leadership or control play a part in that right there, in the decision making on what you do going forward? I'll kind of repeat it again. So you have a child, and you're trying to expose them to new and exciting things, get them out of their shell, or for whatever reason, you think that as a parent this is what you should be doing, right? So with that being said, you say, hey, I want to get my child out, expose them to this, and this, but they like, yeah, I ain't really trying to do that. So the next steps, leadership versus control. What happens after that? Hope I was clear enough.
I think,
That-
I think I got the most and the oldest kids on here. And I think I've learned that since you're developing young adults and them to become adults and thinking adults, hopefully, you allow them to be a part of the process of choosing some things that they would like to do, but you're not just going to do nothing. See, when you can't just say, okay, well, you playing football. They want to play the violin. So when you open their minds up to say, okay, you got to do something. So let's choose some things so that we can figure out what it is that you're gonna do, because you're not doing this just this. You got to give avenues where it's just like asking closed-end and open-ended questions. You got to give them choices, and it'll help them think that they made those choices when actually you just leading.
I think Roland, what he just described was empowerment. Leadership requires you to empower people. And again, remember earlier when I said empathy, that's the difference. See, like control is just black and white. Leadership is empathy. You got to understand the human element in order for you to be able to communicate effectively with the people that are underneath your leadership. So Roland getting his hands dirty in that scenario, describing, like what he would do to help get his child on, what I'm saying, on track of some sorts. That's empathy. What I'm saying, being demonstrated, true empathy. And because, like you said, you're not going to just do nothing. You basically tell them you're going to figure something out. But so you need to think for yourself. That way you can be happy with the decision that you made, because you're going to have to make one based on the leadership philosophy of this house. If he has to do something and everybody else underneath his care, protection, and provision have to follow his, his example. So when you lead by example, which Roland is describing, you also teach by example, which is what Roland is describing. In order to teach, you got to be able to display empathy, and it's got to be effective, and it's got to be, something that the other person feels empowered about.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It is different. The telling your child you are going to do this, as opposed to saying, what are you good at? What do you want to work on? Let's do that. That's different. You understand what I'm saying? It's that part, the part where you said you're going to do this because you're going to do something, and it's going to be this. That's the controlling side of it. But the leadership side of it will say, hey, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? What do you really want to do? All right, let's find a way to make this happen. But you cannot do nothing. I think the youth nowadays, to Vic's point and to Roland's point too, kind of, sort of, I think the youth nowadays would be better at moving forward in their lives if they knew that the ideas that they had to move forward in their lives were their own, as opposed to you telling them what they are going to do. You understand what I'm saying?
I'm going to even simplify it for myself how I was, right? So my father controlled the situation up till a certain age, right? When I could make my own decision and decide what left or right. But he took control over everything up until that point. We didn't eat, sleep, and breathe until it was a certain age where he said, okay, what do you guys want to do with your lives? You have to implement these strong boundaries, these strong, especially today with kids and the access they have outside of you, right? So it's a different time back then. But too many of these people are not willing to put their foot down, and take that leadership role to say no, right? And that's why they're running wild, and you got all this happening, all that happening. You're looking around going like, Jesus Christmas, like, you guys read? Like, no. And I think up to a certain, you control your kid. Control, yes. To make sure he doesn't fall, put his hand on the stove. You control him up to a certain point. And then after that, you have to back the reins a bit and let him develop who he is as a man. But the initial beginning stages where you want to mold him and make sure he does things right and make sure everything's cool and taking care of him, that's a form of control. And you should implement that control because there's nobody else to blame but you. And I think too many people are scared to take that helm, The way I was raised, you'd call it abuse today, but I never did drugs, never did anything stupid. I was in a straight line. That's all I'm saying.
I think control shows up when people are irresponsible.
Yeah, irresponsible. Explain that.
You just said like your dad had to control you.
Up to yes, I'm under his roof. I'm going to school. I'm going to college.
Because younger Antoine that needed his father to control him was probably undisciplined in some ways, irresponsible in some ways, inexperienced in some ways. Control comes into play in the absence of experience and
and you're young. Exactly, you're young. You're a young child. Yep. You're a young child. You don't know nothing at 10. You know nothing at 8. You know nothing at 14. You know nothing at 16. You're thinking with your other head.
Leadership without control.
That's all.
And this is exactly why you can't have leadership without control, because what Antoine just described is just that.
Hey, I appreciate it so far, man. Appreciate everything. We're about to get into the final thoughts, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who has been here tonight, tuning into the chat. All of those great things like that. I really appreciate all the feedback. I know I wasn't able to get to everybody and mention you name by name, but again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We're going to go around the horn real quick, and we're going to complete and finish up this episode with our final thoughts. Antoine, let's roll.
I'm going to take a firm stance on this leadership and control, right? Because I will control my kid growing up to a certain point, because he's under my roof and my guidance and my protection, right? And the first thing I have to think about is my family and making sure they grow up in a straight line. After they get to a certain age, I pull the reins back and I let them develop in who they are. But the initial stages in the beginning, when they don't know nothing, you don't know nothing at 16. I don't even think you know anything at 18. You get a little curious at 18, but you don't know nothing, right? And at 20, you're starting to see what you did stupid at 18. So the first forms of a kid's life and development is making sure that he has the best tools possible to move forward in life. And if it doesn't come from you, it doesn't come from your parents, you are the first line of defense for all that. First line of defense for protection. That comes in a form of control. And to that kid, it's not control. To that kid, it's looked upon as guidance. And too many people don't want to put that foot down and make it guidance and control. So they let them, I can't do this. I can't do, my child is, no, your child is dumb because you're not giving him any leadership to move forward with the right things in place. So you have to take control in the beginning. And then when he starts to develop who he is, his curiosities, then you pull the reins back and you become that guiding force for him, right? And then when he goes off track, you pull him right back in and go, no. It's that whole bird thing. After the bird flies away from the nest, your job is done. And I think that for me, there's a strong sense of control within leadership depending on the situation. And if I know I'm putting the one I love or my significant other, and I know I'm going to put the control in her to let her know that's a bad situation you're putting yourself in, the leadership in me is going to tell her not to go. Now, if she's stupid enough to break those two roles, then she knows she's going to be smart enough to know the consequences of her doing that, because now she's jeopardizing what we have. But all this should be in a form of discussion, how things are made. You set the boundaries, you set the rules. Yes, rules. You set the laws between you and her. All that is part of the communication part that you have an understanding. So first of all, she wouldn't come to you with a stupid question like, can I go to that's going to put me in harm's way? No. And she's going to know that the friend that you don't like, because you know why you don't like her, she's going to know no, she's not going to bother you with stupid stuff like that. Right? She's going to come with you with things that make sense. And I think that's a very good part of leadership, and vice versa. I may make a stupid decision, and it's her part to put me in check and go, you did that the last time, it didn't work out too well. So let's try a different approach. My job is to go, you know what, you're right. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Antoine Christopher, 555-555-5555.
I'm done.
Control versus leadership, striking the balance. I am going to say that I learned a lot tonight. I learned that control and leadership are symbiotic and not all the time synonymous. Control is a situation. Leadership is using your team to handle said situation and learning how to delegate. In relationships, sometimes leadership and control are synonymous because you must take control of certain situations in order for the relationship to move or the relationship to die. Tonight I learned a lot. Tonight I learned a lot. That's my final thought.
Control versus leadership. I can do the leadership conversation all day. I would say, to start off with, immature leaders use control and make it the norm. I think that's one of the biggest issues that they experience and run into as they start to get comfortable in their role of leader. And you will find that in organizations, you will find that in households as well. As that leader starts to develop, they start to move away from control being the norm to only using the control to benefit the relationship, because they understand the relationship is the most important person in the relationship. An immature follower will actually use the word control to manipulate the leader because they don't want to conform to the agreement that both the leader and the leader and the led made in the beginning. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind. Leaders develop and they grow. That's the key that we have to keep in mind. Leaders develop and grow and mature into the facets of the role that they're actually occupying, hopefully so that they can develop the lead. And so if the lead actually, has made a commitment to the role, to the actual organization, to the relationship, again, made a commitment to the organization or the relationship, I think that's also deserves to be said and thought about again, makes the commitment to the organization or the relationship, then they don't mind being led and they understand that the leader has their best interests at heart.
Leaders lead by example, and the leaders' examples would be the rules, the laws, the guidelines, or whatever the individual, whether it's at work, you have guidelines. At home, you have guidelines. In the States, driving down the street, we have these things called speed signs. If you disobey with the speed signs, you can get a ticket. And that speaks to you, not necessarily the laws. So when you agree, whether you agree or disagree, you agree by either staying in the relationship, staying in the vicinity of the laws, or whatever said situation is. But a leader falls under subjection and leads by example to let you know that it can be done, and this is how we move over here. Now, if you want to do it some other way, you can do it over there. But as a person leads and the people who follow, you'll see we all prosper and we all get to our destination.
I think on leadership and control, I believe that leadership is responsible and knows the boundaries for its own resources, whether it be mental or physical actual resources. And I think in control, you have to know that you have to manage your access to said resources. So you have to have the self-control, like what was discussed, and because control isn't always about someone else making decisions for you. It's about realizing what level of control you have, which is based on your experience, proximity, and whatever it is that you know. Plenty of situations have resulted in a questionable leadership decision or lack of leadership and control. There's plenty of situations where you can even look at the Menendez brothers. How many stories have we seen where defiant teenagers go against what they were told, and they go out and wreck a car and hurt somebody else in the process? And even though the leadership was effective, the lack of self-control of the individuals who were subjected to said leadership still acted outside the boundaries and got whatever consequences that came with it. So I think that leadership inspires people to be the best versions of themselves, because you can only have what your personal accountability that can afford you. And that has nothing to do with anything but self-control.
Hey, Jim, and there was a bunch of great final thoughts. I really appreciate it. Also, lastly, I apologize, but I forgot. I wanted to shout out to everybody on the different platforms out here, the different people on LinkedIn, different YouTube channels, Facebook, all those different things like that. And if you're on Facebook, you can check all of the videos and stuff like that are on our different separate platforms. But you can go to Uncle Junior Network, Code Talk, Cross Table from Chris. I know they're streaming over there. So again, thank you all for joining in. I appreciate everything. Again, gentlemen, I appreciate you all for being here tonight. We will be back again next week, same time, same channel, all those different things. On your way out the door, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who may benefit from this show. We will see you guys next week. We are out.